I have a cold today, and I think I'm picking up, so do a lot of people. So if this felt like a one-cylinder class, it was, but it doesn't excuse anything. The work is the work, no matter what condition you find yourself in. Probably the most important time to do the work ever will be in the least comfortable moment of your life at the end. So you want to feel how to, in a sense, be able to give yourself over to something greater than yourself at any given moment. I had a new student today cancel before they came because they discovered that it wasn't just going to be a talk. This was going to be a practice. And they were very freaked out by that. And part of me understands it. They had hoped it would be what's called a non-dual talk or an Advaita Yoga talk, the talk that basically says you're already what you're looking for and nothing you're looking for is in the future, you're perfect as you are. It's a very desirable talk because there really is nothing to be done other than to find that and to be reminded of it and to feel somehow inside yourself that you're cool as you are, nothing to worry about. And there is truth to that. There is truth to that. But the thing to understand, and this is really important, there is the egocentric being with a name that you are, and there is the vast infinite nature of being that you also are. The problem really has to do with identification. Are you able to let go of the limited centralized idea of yourself to just be, or are you stuck in certain parameters of ego-mindedness that make that hard? It's a really interesting conundrum in spiritual practice, especially the non-dual practices, that it's the ego mind that wants to accept its perfection, that wants to somehow absolve itself of work. I'm fine as I am. And again, there's really truth to that. But it's a very limited, very conscripted truth. Until you know yourself as you truly are, the ego mind is simply a tool to approach that exquisite, infinite knowledge. And there is a process. Rudy called it a life's work. My experience now that I'm entering the end of my life is that he was absolutely right. It's a life's work, and it's a life's work for a reason. Because it's really demanding. It's really hard to let go of all of your safety nets, all of the things that protect you and make you feel comfortable. Because all of that stuff is your obstruction. Everything that you think you are, a good person, a kind person, a terrible person, someone who did awful things and caused people suffering. Whatever you think you are has a grip on you. And that grip is the thing you have to overcome in some way. If someone tells you you're perfect as you are, and you're sitting around in this state of constricted unhappiness, that's not a good message. It doesn't do anything. It will not take care of you. I remember hearing that message back in the old days and going, it can't be true. If I am what I'm looking for, then I don't want it. That was my big message. And I didn't get the pursuit. But here's what I am really understanding. Back in the 60s, in the psychedelic era, there was a thing going around that every time you took an acid trip into the infinite void, or whatever you took it into, there was the possibility of coming back different. Your molecular configuration would be altered in some ways, often for better, often for worse. That it was a crapshoot. Every time you went up, you would be disassembled and reconstructed. I'm not trying to sell you on LSD, and I'm not trying to sell you on that journey. But there's something reasonable about that idea. That when you go off into whatever you want to call it, let's get rid of the LSD image and let's just go into the spiritual image. When you go into the self, when you enter into larger consciousness, which you do through meditation, when you sit still and you overcome the noise of your mind, the noise of your emotions, the noise of your body, and you get really still, something expansive starts to happen. And you've all had it. There's this feeling of floating in something bigger and more beautiful than your daily self allows you to know. You have somehow gotten out of the constriction of your day-to-day being, and you have a sense of temporary, usually, freedom. It is a spiritual comfort zone. It is cleansing. It is uplifting. It is expansive. And you stay there for the length of your meditative class, and then slowly you are brought back down into the old ego self. But as you are reconstituted into the ego self, just like the LSD trip, you actually come back different. You come back different because parts of you have become unwound, unknotted. There's a part of you as you relax inside that allows the larger dynamic of being to play upon the tightly knotted person that you normally are, and it feels like it's breathing more. So you come back different. Unlike the LSD experience, which can be so destructive in terms of being unable to separate from ego-mindedness while you're in the vastness of being, when you go into meditative state, you actually enter into a very supportive, very enriching, very loving space. And when it re-delivers you back into your daily life, it brings you back clearer, more whole, more able to function. And you will find that parts of you are or have already fallen away. And it is a lightening of the load. You lighten the load every time you sit. A little bit. It's incremental for a lot of reasons. One of them is, if you were to let go of the whole thing, you probably couldn't handle it. You would have no idea of who you were, where you were, how you got here. And it does happen to people, where suddenly the ego mind is just gone, shattered, and you're just left in the vastness of being. Many people in institutions are experiencing that because they have no grounding for it. No, they have no framework for it. But if you have a framework and you are doing this practice, this work, you are letting go incrementally parts of your being, and if you're smart enough, you don't bring them back. You don't do the yo-yo yoga routine of letting go of something and then reconstituting and letting it go and reconstituting. You just let it go. You let it go. And one of the key tenets of this particular practice is asking for help to surrender, to let go. So that you go into the deepest parts of yourself and you feel the, I call it the sticky stuff that holds things together. I forget what it's called. Pardon? Yeah, sorry. There's Velcro. Thank you. We all have Velcro in us. So we're very free except for that one thing that It just sticks back to that thing. That one thing that comes up. Your mother said something to you when you were 4, or your best friend, or whatever it is, the ideas about yourself, the Velcro ideas. And what happens in a class is you, oh, that's wonderful. Oh, what's wrong with me? Something's wrong, something's missing. Oh, I know what. And you Velcro again. You go right back into the old thing. Myself. But it's a self that is problematic because it sticks to an old concept of yourself. And what you really want to do in the meditative process is to let go, relax, and ask for help, to surrender, to keep this stuff gone, to really get freer. And day by day, in your practice, you become a more lightened and perhaps enlightened being. You become freer of yourself. And that freedom has I can't say it's an attainment, or it's a moment where it suddenly happens, although it appears to be that way. There comes a point, though, it seems, when you have dropped off so much stuff from your practice that there's only tiny little stuff left, little Velcro moments. And what happens is you suddenly go, and it doesn't come back. You're just like, you have done it, in a way. Or, more importantly, the universe looks at you and says, you have done it. You have done the work on yourself that makes you a noble and worthy vessel of this vast content of being that wants to be shared with the universe itself. You become worthy in your own eyes. And that arrival is really important, and it allows for this awakening to happen. It's not a reaction to what you've done. It's, in a sense, a natural unfolding. It just happens. You finally get to a place where your personality, ego, mind, is no longer central to the equation. You are part of something bigger. And I cannot tell you how crucial and remarkable and extraordinary it is to get to the place where you are not the center of the universe. It's called freedom. You are the most boring entity that you can possibly imagine, and you don't know it until you finally let go of it. Who cares about your stuff beside you? Who really cares? It's so boring. And you people all come to me after class and you sit down to tell me how horrible it is, and how hard it is, and how difficult it is. And I acknowledge it is. It is hard, it is difficult, we suffered, life is complicated. But the process that we are in is a liberation from that. It's a letting go of it bit by bit by bit. Rudy said, you sit every day for the rest of your life. And I did that. And then, you all know this story, finally I said it's not working, and I gave up after 44 years of literally daily sitting. I gave up. For 2 weeks I didn't meditate. I had not meditated in 44 years. And at 2 weeks into that not meditating, this thing happened where I was sitting with somebody, again you've heard this story, Paul Hederman was giving a talk, and when the talk was over, I suddenly knew there was no Bruce left. It was just over. Done. Whatever that means, the sun came out and the little candle of Bruce meant nothing. Of course, I then discovered that one has tendencies to what Paul Hederman called brucing, and we each have our brucing moments. We have our moments where these things come back, the old Velcros. But from the moment you awaken, it is an ongoing flowering. It's not like a done deal. It's like the beginning of the next step. This freedom to be beyond you. The freedom to be your true self in the world. Now you may arrive at that on your deathbed. I think some people, perhaps many people do. But more problematically are the people who don't. The deathbed doesn't solve anything. You're just still caught in this ego thing that gets born again, probably. That's what the Buddhists tell us. You know, I just bought a tanka in Kathmandu that had, this is the wheel of life, and Mara holding on, and everybody's cycling around to the different stages of what it means to be alive. And the whole idea is to get off the wheel. How do you get off the wheel? You have to become someone who masters the ego-minded attachments and starts to release yourself from them, to truly ask for help, to surrender, and find this freedom that you already have, that's already there, that you have had from the beginning. But the ego cannot own that, because the only way to arrive at that is to finally let go of this ego mind, or to see how puny and insignificant it really is. That is the journey we're on. If you just want to sit and hear people talk about that journey, and just hear people talk about non-duality and talk about that liberation, that's great. But there's work to be done. Whatever that may be, you have to look at yourself and go, what is that work? And that work is not to follow Buddha, is not to follow Krishna, not to follow Rudy or Bruce. That work is your work, and the only person to follow is you. And the hardest thing for me as a teacher is the realization of how casual and lazy and inconsistent most everybody is. People have a weekend mentality in terms of meditation, in terms of freeing themselves from the world. So you sit and you meditate maybe twice a week, and then you got to go to the gym, and you got to do this, and you don't have time. You got to pick up the kids, or whatever it is. You don't have time for it, and I completely get that. I completely respect that. On the other hand, it won't get it done. It simply won't get it done. You cannot put it second. It cannot be the thing you do after you do everything else. It has to be the thing you do before everything else. It's the only way it gets to a place of liberation. Now you have to decide for yourself, is that worth it? Do I really want to be liberated? Well, you may not. Most human beings do not want to be liberated. They want to keep going around the circle over and over until they realize somewhere along the way, as Buddha put it quite succinctly, life is suffering. Everything you get, you lose. Everything. Everything you get, you lose. Period. One of the incredible things about lifelong meditation is you get to my age and you realize it's taking everything away all by itself. I don't have to give it up. It's just taking it. And it's going to take everything. And I can either cry about it or just go, that's how it is. That's what it does. It takes it all away. Everything. And if you're conscious and considerate of the process, you'll go, take it. When I was in India, I don't know if any of you listened to my talk last week, but Blanche and I had this amazing trip to India. It became a trip about two things. One was, it's not about you, which is my line from my son that made me do this trip for Blanche. This is about Blanche. It was not about me. And I had to really put myself out of the picture. This was completely about my wife. And the journey of not making it about me was the most unbelievably joyous experience ever. It had nothing to do with me. I didn't have to think about me once. I had to think about my wife continually. And it was a beautiful, beautiful thing to do. And then, when I got to these great spots, these places of profound spiritual energy, where Buddha gave his first lectures called Sarnath, and Bodh Gaya, where he had his enlightenment, and where Nityananda lived and died in Ganeshpuri, I bowed down on the ground and I put my head on the cement, and all I could do was go, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I didn't want anything. I just said, please take it all. Just take it. I don't need or want another thing in my life. It's yours. Take it. And it did. It just took it. And it filled me with a kind of gratitude for every one of you. And you have to know that every one of you cropped up in this prostration in front of the great Buddhist shrines. And I just said, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I have been left with a kind of ongoing sense of, I am nothing but gratitude. That's all I am. This walking gratitude, period. It is so beautiful, so liberating, so free, and I cannot tell you why it's worth getting to, but it is worth getting to. It is better than ice cream. It is better than sex. It is a constant. It is so exquisite, and it is available to every human being. Why would anybody choose the misery of having to, whatever it is, make $1 billion? Look at anybody who's made $1 billion and show me happiness. I mean, this is an old cliche. I know it's a cliche. But I'm trying to express, for those of you who are struggling, how do I get $5,000? You know, that whatever that is, the universe has a way of taking care of us. And if it doesn't take care of us, then it means we're entering extremity, and ultimately it's going to free us of being in this world. But mostly it takes care of us in ways that are unexplicable. We are so cared for endlessly. And I'm telling you, when you enter into the realm of gratitude, where you remove yourself from the center of the picture, you will see how life works. You will see how much it wants to deliver and give and say thank you to you. Because gratitude flows both ways. It is exquisitely real. It is at the core, and probably, I can't say the core because it keeps deepening. It keeps revealing more and more and more and more. And I am breathless with amazement at what is. My job as a teacher is to persuade you to get on track with this, or at least acknowledge that it's not really what you want. But don't come here once a week, like going to church, and thinking that takes care of it, because it doesn't. And of course, when I sit with you, I see exactly what's going on. I see exactly the person who's here to make themselves feel good about their spiritual practice. That's not the goal. Feeling good about your spiritual practice is bullshit. It really is. It's to get past your spiritual practice, where life is your being is your practice. Being is everything. Then you don't have to meditate. You don't have to do anything. You just walk around in a state of a kind of wonder. Wonder. I've said this to you all recently, and I will say it again. Everything I have come to know is no longer known to me. I don't know anything. Every bit of clarity I have comes in the moment and disappears. I don't own a sense of the world. I may be wrong on everything I'm saying here. I'm not trying to pontificate about this is the way to do it. I'm just trying to tell you, based on my experience, the doorway to self, to exquisite presence and being, is a path of effort until it is no longer effortful. It is a path that gives you everything you were looking for. Everything. The thing you thought you could buy, the thing you thought you could give birth to, the love that you thought would take care of you forever. This gives you that without having to give it to you in a temporal form. It gives it to you in an eternal form. That's how it feels. I could be wrong. We'll find out. But I will tell you, it's worth it, in my mind, to get to a place of commitment to what this is all about. Commitment is not casual. Commitment is not once in a while. Commitment is doing it every day. You know, you all know that I started walking some years ago, and I have to walk every day. And every day I have reasons not to. And every day there's something coming up that makes me go, where am I going to fit in a walk? But I don't let a day go by without my walk, without my 10,000, 12,000, whatever, 15,000 steps. I don't know what it is that's causing that to happen, other than that commitment seems to be the reward. The commitment is the reward. Whatever it takes, it's to be done. Whatever it takes, it's worth it. If you guys don't feel you're on board, get on board. And if you don't want to get on board, that's fine. Go off and have fun. You know, it won't last. You know, you're going to get old if you're lucky. And you're going to watch what happens. It's really shocking. You know? It really is. My mother, at the age of 74, dressed like a teenager. She never accepted that she was old. Never. And she left the world, I think, in a state of shock. You know, it's like you cannot maintain an illusion. You can only maintain what's real. What's real is right in front of you at any given moment, And this is that. This is real. Something brings you guys here. It brought you here today. It's real in you. It's real for you. It's available in the most phenomenal sense imaginable. If you go to these Buddhist temples, and Bodh Gaya is like, I call it the Disneyland of Buddhism. There are so many thousands of people chanting and singing with loudspeakers and doing all of their stuff. And the Tibetans do this thing, I talked about it last week, where they bow down, they do this, then they bow down flat out, then they stand up and they do it again. And they circle the whole Bodhi tree arena. And I looked at them and I kept going, I don't know that you need to do this. I don't know if this is crucial. And I have to say, what I came away from that understanding with was, it is crucial. For those people, it is crucial. If your job is to pilgrimage, to go somewhere, to expiate sins, to expiate stuff you're holding on to, do it. You've got to do what you got to do to get free of the thing that's holding you back. That's the job. That's the spiritual journey. Get free of all that crap that makes you feel unworthy and not available to the larger gift of being. Do what you got to do, but then do it. Don't spend your whole life thinking you got to keep going on pilgrimage. At some point you're done. Do this. Sit down, open up, and make yourself available to the ultimate stillness that is at the core of your being. That stillness has the pathway to everything. And it's who you are. It's who you have always been. So, my parting words, take it seriously. This is worth it. It's important. In my mind, it's the only really important thing there is. And I tell you, when you get to the end of your life, and if you haven't done it, it's very late in the game. So take it now and do your work. Any questions?
Comment and a question. Firstly, your one-cylinder engine ran me over and killed me in the best way. So maybe you perceived it as one cylinder, but it was a Mack truck.
It was working as hard as it could.
Yeah. Secondly, I know Rudy used to talk about pain being God's love. And recently, I realized when I'm putting 100% of my attention on the 0.01% of who I am, the egoic, identified mind, it can be very painful because that 99.9% is why we're here. And I understood it conceptually when he would say that. And when I was in pain, I certainly didn't want to believe it. But this last sort of round, I really understood how it was the path. And if you didn't want to let go of something so much, you wouldn't have that much pain. And when you finally succumb to it and say, I'm willing to die, to not get rid of this pain, but get rid of the source of the pain, it's necessary.
Thank you. You can't run from it. You can only run toward it. And you have to be willing to die. That's exactly right, Todd. Thank you.
Hi. I love this work. Thank you. And I am 100% in, and I do it every day. And one of the other processes I do is I do get on my knees to the God of my understanding. I did so this morning. It was, in that whole I want phase, and heard just be grateful, which I was. And then came here and got into that whole paradigm of, I love what I do for service, but I'm afraid that I'll stop getting paid, and then I won't be able to do what I love for service, and actually charge people $5,000. When you said that, I was like, oh my God, he was like reading my mind. I was actually worried about that. But then I said, let me just be in love and hold space for whoever needs it in the room. And when I did that, all the thoughts went away, and I gave to whoever needed it and the energy that you were serving. And then my body started to hurt all over. Like my hips started to feel like I couldn't sit another minute. My back started to ache. My neck tensed up. And I got to the end, but nothing hurts again. So I'm just curious if you've experienced, is that my body just trying to not be present, or?
No, body's hurt. It hurt. It sits still for a long time. I teach a long class. That's part of it. And the class today was painful, really painful for me. So I wouldn't be surprised if, in Rudy's terms, because he used to say this, you guys are my shock absorbers.
Yeah, it really hurt today.
Yeah.
More than,
So,
I've never had that pain here
yeah,
before.
for me it was unbearable.
Okay.
But, I can choose not to do it and say I have an excuse, But I don't have any excuses. I'm shocked that I didn't cough all day. I coughed all night. I don't know why I didn't cough during the class. Now I'm talking about it, so I'll start coughing. but you don't buy yourself out of human suffering. You just find that suffering to be transmutative into something else. It turns into something beyond itself. You have to go through it. And so many people I know are going through unbearable forms of pain. But use it well, and it will take you to God, really. Because where else can you go? It's unbearable. Where do you go when it's unbearable? You go crazy, or you go to God. And God goes, but not necessarily on your time frame. You may go through some really heavy-duty stuff. You know, again, I quote this a lot during Easter period, but Christ on the cross was in terrible pain and abandoned, as he thought, by God. You know, just we're just simple. We're simple mortals who are going to feel pain. So even if somebody of that stature, that mastery, is able to lose it, we can too. And then something happens, and I don't know what that thing that happens. I call it grace mostly. Comes back, and you move beyond it. You know, but this is so personal to everybody. And if you're going to go to Buddha help me, or Bruce help me, or Rudy help me, no. You help you. God help me. Whatever you want to call it, self, being. That's the help that we're looking for. It's your ride. It's completely your ride. It's not, your ride is not my ride. I am a pointer. I cannot take care of the problem. That's not my job. My job is to help remind you, or in the best terms, inspire you to do this practice, because ultimately it leads to what is the most remarkable part of human being, which is discovering you're human. Which is really where this ends. That's what, you may think you're going to discover your God. I think you discover you're a person. You're a human, with all that means, and it's exquisitely beautiful. You know, but it may go beyond that. If it does, I'll talk about the journey if I go there. But right now, I just feel very human.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Personal pain that you're talking about, and LSD in the 60s. I did that, and I went on a trip. But there was a human. I was gone, and it wasn't me or that body. And I was in the universe. But there was a human person that was there with me that said, whispered, "You can come back." Had I not had that, I don't know what would have happened, but I was there. Now, how that changed me is more clear now than it was ever for all this time. Now the question is, there seems to be a fear that if I go there, I won't be able to come back. So there's constriction somewhere. Can you explain how can you come back if you decide to go there?
Don't give up coming back.
That's the worst that could happen, I guess.
It's the worst that can happen, and it's actually the best in some level. It's not that you don't come back to this, because you're still here. You still have a body, unless you die, which then and you will one day. So at one point you do not come back, but until then, be willing to not come back. Total surrender to whatever is. And when that happens, you will discover that you are here and there simultaneously. You are this and you are that simultaneously. You are one whole thing. And that, I don't think you can escape that. I don't think you can not come back. You are the eternal being. You cannot not be. As far as I know, there's no such thing as not being. I don't know what that is. It's a little scary on some level, that you are forever. And that's something we're taught. It may not be true, but I believe there's something real in that. We are infinite, eternal being. And what is that other than it manifests as this? And in that, I got to meet my wife, I got to meet my children, I got to meet my grandchildren, I got to meet Rudy, I got to meet you. All of that's happened. I'm not unhappy about that. And now I get to see that you are me. That I've gotten to meet myself in so many forms, in so many manifestations, And they're beautiful, and I love all of these forms. I love meeting myself in every manifestation that occurs. And when I went to India, which is like going into the unconscious, because it's the opposite side of the world, and it's a part that we are not really familiar with in Western culture, nor would they be familiar with us in this culture. They're very different. Coming into the unconscious part of your life and meeting yourself there, wow, that is really stunning. And you travel all over the world, so you know that there are so many places you go that are just not here. And yet, there you are. And there is yourself, showing you itself every second. And you learn to love it and make peace with it and honor it and do whatever you can to tell it, I'm so happy to make your acquaintance.
Why does it hurt so much to live after they choose not to come back?
Say that again.
How come it hurts so much for us still here when they choose not to come back?
Oh. It has to do with our attachment, really, to this realm. And, you know, it's an exquisite realm on so many levels. And when people leave it, they are really depriving us of some of the joy of this world, as we are going to deprive other people as we leave it. It's just the way it works. It's part of the balance of life. Would I have designed it that way myself if I was in charge? I don't know. But I really do know that it causes a lot of suffering.
I think that there should be some, but there isn't because of the human part, because of heartbreak is so deep. Some, which there is, intellectual knowing of the everything is in divine order, which is absolute. But this other thing seems to get in the way.
Well, the intellectual thing won't cut it. It has to be the other thing, which is pain and feeling. And that pain and feeling, I can only tell you, and I know the subject you're dealing with, and I think I've described to you a loss that came to my neighbor that was so profoundly disturbing. And her ride is much deeper than the ride I'm on, obviously, because she lost her son and granddaughter. But I've been on that ride peripherally, and I can hardly bear it. But that lack of bearing is opening me up to universal loss. Universal loss is at the core of God's love, and I cannot explain it. I cannot get near it, except I feel it. As I draw into it, I feel it's the only solace. It's the only place I can go for solace. And that solace is total. You can go there. You have to go through the pain, not around it, not away from it, not trying to intellectualize it, not trying to do battle with it. You have to go into it, which means feel it and suffer it and be with it. You can ask why if you want. You can do all of that. You can cry your heart out. But you have to go through it, and at some point it will take you in. It's just how loud you have to knock at that door.
It's blasting a hole open so wide that
Yes.
I don't care about anything.
Yes, yes, that's the journey. That's the journey. You will end up caring, but in a whole different way. And not caring about anything, you will care about everything. But it will be it'll be what the Dalai Lama talks about. It's just unending compassion for what everybody goes through.
It's painful.
It's very painful. Yeah. Todd?
My experience with that is that nobody dies not on time. And even though we don't understand that at all, I recently had a very close friend who was pregnant for the full term, week late. Child came out with the cord around its neck and was dead. And spending time with her and the soul, the spirit that still lives in that child, I got. Its life purpose was to be in her womb for that full time, to cleanse whatever was going on with her and her husband, and that it was not supposed to live in this world, and yet its spirit continues to commune with me.
Did you share that with her?
I'm in the process.
Because I had a friend where the similar thing happened, and this woman has lived for 20 years with the idea that that child was an angel who came for a short period to deliver something they were not meant to go longer. I don't know if that's a solace or not, but it seemed she still talks about how that's how she gets through. So I think that can be of help. Sometimes not saying anything and letting them find that out is the way to go. I don't know, but if it feels like it wants to come through you and it feels spiritually driven, go for it and share that, because sometimes people just can't get to that perspective by themselves.
I did write her a letter explaining that and saying, telling her basically to open it when it feels right.
Yeah, well, that's great. And also be humble in it. I don't know if you already sent the letter, but humility, not saying this is how it is,
Well, it
but,
didn't come from me, I mean, it came through me, there
Right.
was definitely no personality involved with it.
well, that's very helpful. And I think that we can do that for other people. And sometimes it's verbal, sometimes it's not verbal, but showing up for somebody else when they're suffering, not to prescribe anything so much as being there for them, is really helpful. And as you grow spiritually, you will find yourself drawn into that space, because that's what the world uses you for. You'll be there to help people. Your compassion will be astounding to yourself and to everyone around you. But you will feel more suffering than you've ever known possible. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming.